Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Brad. Oh, my word just crashed.
Yeah.
A second. Okay, I'm back up. Let me know when.
Yeah, let me just. Okay, I'm good.
Give me a second.
Gotcha. In the United States, after the healthcare workers receive a living wage, that stems workforce shortages and physician burnout, particularly in rural areas for under 23. An excess of healthcare workers, healthcare systems in crisis, averages and earns on an hourly basis of minimum wage, struggling to cover basic living costs. Burnout and training workers are fairly compensated for the force, bringing space and investment to strengthen the workforce. Financial insecurity means many residents set aside aspirations to pursue higher pay, especially these residents would have more freedom to pursue critically needed positions in rural communities. Currently, minimum wage is inadequate to cover shelter. It's time we demand a living wage. And living wage is key. Look with Lear and Jacobs 23. Healthcare was facing a shortage of workers due to increases in demand from an aging population. Surge in demand will continue. Low pay is a significant contributor to the difficulties. Workers not earning enough to meet basic needs, so wages force workers to take on multiple jobs, leading to burnout, loss productivity, and exit from the industry. Low wage workers have turnover rates 4 times higher than higher wage workers. Burnout shortages is a significant public health problem, and it's good business, boosts productivity, and reduces turnover. Gasco 23. A significant proportion will experience a surge of around 30% in income and modest costs, greater than 30% across the healthcare sector. Increasing wage will yield positive outcomes for the industry, curbing turnover, facilitating improving staffing levels, and enhancing performance. State and raise wage. This investment will easily pay back in retention productivity, simply made good business. And advance on pandemics. The U.S. healthcare system is on the precipice. Labor shortages are dire due to an impending aging crisis. Jones Nelson 24. Demographic transformation will look for profound implications for healthcare. The population is aging at an unprecedented rate, with boomers reaching retirement. Healthcare is underprepared, growing shortage of providers, supplies, insufficient meet demand, affects access, quality, and cause health outcomes. Trained system with shortages requires reform, and they're an existential threat to the healthcare system, causing price inflation and rural inequality. CA 829. You also be short 100,000 healthcare workers, exacerbate disparities from chain burnout, wage stagnation, inflation, and cost of critical labor shortages. Existential threat to healthcare systems operating in certain locations, difficult gaps between rural and urban, and shortages that pandemic preparedness. Living wage stalls through raise 23. Work for next public health emergency remains unfinished. The most glaring weakness is depleted health workforce. If infectious disease physicians serve on the front line, starting with a decline in ranks, well short of the specialists needed, a cornerstone of the workforce, quickly respond to emerging threats that experts efforts fall short. Specialists among the lowest paid in the medical field is a major barrier for med and residents, and healthcare workers are key preventing infection and treatment. Rounders 21. Healthcare non-employee numbers require increasing demand between filled and available. Additional 1.26 million openings per year. Patient increases, provider stays the same. Ratio increases, less time to each patient. Quality will suffer. Healthcare workers work longer hours, not forced to show up. They will potentially expose colleagues and patients. Like commit lapses in patient care, understaffing, increased risk of infections, burnout, decreased revenue, advertised vacancies, training placements, and the U.S. is key to global solvency to fight inevitable pandemics. Is a unifying leader on disease prevention. Dylan 17. Pandemics return with great frequency to meet WHO is with deep and vulnerability and novel and mutated pathogens spread and kill faster, rival nuclear weapons and deadly responsibility, fragmented and unifying authority. International actors cannot fair share to navigate quickly enough. U.S. plays a key role in revitalized nation, national wall against disease and existential threat, and pandemic preparedness prevents extinction. Albert 21. COVID unveiled decline in pandemic preparedness and health security are politicized cause rhetoric. IG presents an existential threat that worse yet to come. Perfect storm states facing internal security threats on top of biological effects. No-code coercion. Russia active preventively strike versus cyberspace and AI. China increase activities. Copenhagen nationalism and authoritarianism, which is from the food infra. Leaders displaced to spread potential for biological attacks. Hiding adversaries include effectively replicated by the bio attack. The U.S. must fight the same commitment. Biological threats must be existential, and preceding shocks cause spiraling political reactions that culminate in existential war, independently spur shoot-ups and protectionism, proliferation, and populism. Suzuki 21. Pandemics have set the scene for wars by weakening societies and exacerbating civil conflict. Pandemics have spread with unprecedented speed due to increased mobility. Crisis prompts aggressive actions that destabilize precarious systems underpinned by conventional nuclear weapons, as well as weaponized chemical and biological attack. The pandemic destabilizes the nuclear-prone conflict by incapacitating commanders who issue strike orders, creating uncertainty and opening opportunity for a first strike and state might use a pandemic as a cover for military provocations, wartime trade shutdown, and broke budgets blown out. Foreign policies have become more nationalistic, states proliferate nuclear weapons, and bioattacks and even natural outbreaks, and it's attributed as bioattacks cause nuclear retaliation. Until 21. Pandemics might be misinterpreted as deliberate bioattacks or used to mask them without nuclear escalation. The violence modern biotech can be used to bring damages in a more accurate fashion. China, NOCOs, India, Pakistan, other nations maintain extensive dual-use capabilities. Nuclear states can mistake a natural pandemic or accidental release for intentional bioweapons. We're responding with a nuclear attack. Many states have doctors that declare they're prepared to respond to nuclear attacks, and it may not be possible to determine the origins for unfounded nuclear escalation. And precise analysis, take asymmetric responses, challenge exacerbated actors that leverage nuclear escalation, terrorist group, and launch a bioattack against the U.S. with hopes to be perceived as an attack of adversary, bringing nuclear escalation and diminishes trust. Healthcare trust is eroded and poses an accidental risk to the system because of clinician and perception and fairness. Calculus 23. U.S. healthcare faces accidental theft, the loss of confidence and trust that the system is fair, concerned about profit. They carry 83% trust in little and not all correlates to higher cost suboptimal outcomes. And living wage targets the root cause of trust. They prioritize fair wages to uphold the dignity of labor, foster doctor labor trust, and cast business perception is morally responsible. Graph 22. Healthcare uniquely places the intersection of moral structure, mission, and economic demand of sustainability. 5 decade following declining unions, and essential workers separating frontline workers from managers in terms of pay and institutions like hospitals, places, and dignity confront the inevitable aspects of human life, increasing the to market ethos, stripping out moral component of decision-making, foster entrepreneurial culture, focused on the relentless cost-cutting, short-term gains, challenging nature of work, detached fundamental documentation relationships, on organizational structure, ECC, demographic trends like aging, lifetimes comorbidities contributed to shorter around staffing problems, leaving the roles in society, able to give practical and emotional attention, following workers who more than just wage uplift, morale, drawing young people to the profession, reducing burnout, turnover, staffing inefficiencies, lowering patient ratios, and maintaining trust is key to vaccinations, planning can reverse 417. People question immunizations due to the perception that diseases are rare. Practitioners promote vaccination rate. 30% of parents hesitant, trust professionals, pivotal in determining to immunize, perception of bias, advice as well as key to lack of trust and turn to the internet, confound confusion, trust is paramount. Practitioners no longer assume trust, and if you want to effectively trust or less likely to use them, and vaccines work to limit infections. Entree 8. Infectious diseases can be eradicated by an effective vaccine. Requires high level of population immunity. Disease can eliminate locally propagated measles elimination key 95% population immunity. Vaccines prevent almost 6 million deaths worldwide, 99% incidence for diseases in which vaccines have been recommended. Framework. The standard is hedonistic act utilitarianism for first extinction and precludes inevitable world progress. Makes it better keep operatives open. Max 14. Extinction is a reversal. We should exercise to progress. The cost of waiting is initially small. Second, extinction is like a categorically distinct moral cycle, treating tendency on smaller conditions for life itself. Visual 16. Mass exchange is qualitatively different phenomena that every ethical categories not only does it raise life, their history, possibilities, and the ontological conditions of life. Extinction is a matter of global ethics, not simply an issue of field life world erupted and entangled, not static or permanent, permeable, and fluid, constant violence, that only focus on to ignore destruction and conditions of plurality that enables life on earth to thrive. Good for cross.
Okay. I want to talk about the first advantage. The U.S. is key. Can you explain how increasing wages for doctors results in the U.S. suddenly being cast as like a global leader in pandemic preparedness, especially after what Trump did during COVID?
I guess there's like 3 parts to this question. First is solvency. How do we solve pandemic preparedness? That's at the top. The render evidence, low zero evidence, and gospel evidence shows it boosts productivity, reduces turnover. A lot of workers have to work second and third jobs, which means we resolve that by giving them a living wage and allows them to afford rent. A lot of technicians, boots on the ground, are able to fill in the shortages. The second part of the question about global solvency, the Dillon evidence is pretty specific that U.S. modeling around the way and the strength that the healthcare system works models out into other countries, and they tend to copy what the U.S. is doing, especially with the WHO. The WHO norms are highly based on a lot of U.S. healthcare systems,
Okay.
U.S. healthcare pandemic preparedness. And the last part, do you want me to answer?
No, that's fine. I want to talk about advantage 2. So vaccines, obviously 50% of Americans, Republicans, don't trust vaccines at all. Why would they suddenly change their minds because their doctor was nicer to them?
The reason that they don't trust vaccines is because of doctor-patient trust. Our evidence is pretty specific. We tackle the root cause of it, which is that there's not able to form a doctor-patient relationship, i.e. the people who distrust doctors and who are turning to the internet now have an explicit reason for not trusting doctors, because doctors will go in, they'll prescribe an antibiotic, and they'll leave. They don't have time to build up these relationships between doctor-patients and convince them that medical professionals do know what they're doing and can explain to them in depth how the vaccine works, how it's good, and why they should be taking it. That missing explanation, that missing relationship is the reason why so many people are turning to the
Sure.
internet.
I want to talk back to advantage 1. So I guess going back to solvency, growing short of healthcare providers, this is obviously a long-term thing. People need to go to medical school, get trained, etc. If that's the case, solvency probably starts at like 15 years.
No. A lot of the shortages for evidence, especially if you look at our evidence like RATNA, is about people like healthcare technicians or nursing assistants. Yes, they need to be trained. It's not a medical school. It's not a degree. All you need to go is get trained. It takes weeks to get a job there.
Okay.
Healthcare technicians, food technicians, nursing assistants. Nurses need to get trained, but nursing school is a lot shorter than medical school. You have infectious disease physicians for residents who are already out of medical school.
I want to talk about the
etc.
Mitchell evidence. It says extinction would erase life forms and their unique histories. Does that mean preserving cultures and preserving histories is the reason why extinction is bad? Or what other warrant does Mitchell have for extinction outweighing?
There's a few warrants. First, life, histories, and possibilities is about the ontological being of the self, i.e. the ontological being of the self takes into account historical trends, takes into account possibilities of where the future is going to go, and extinction erases all of that, which encompasses ontology writ large. The second part that it erases is a matter of identity. Mitchell makes a claim that worlds are entangled and they can change, things are permeable and fluid, and we have capacities to make progress in certain instances and in different certain ways, but the argument is that we can only do that if we're not dead from extinction.
Okay, I'll send it out. It'll be 2 off, and then just the framing page, and then the advantage. It's called round 6, but it's for round 4. Okay, it's up.
Framing case.
Okay, you both good? Okay. Settler living relies on native death, genocide, and dispossession are woven into the very fabric of global race, into cultural, political, and ecological race. Our hope of this world is cruelly optimistic and mystifies the temporal zones of genocide wars. When on the settled to find civilization, production, and access in the days of world to space, and intertest invasion, people occurring world whose existence of intertest because violence enables new cars to exist to shock for the Western model of living to the liberal economy, creative political ontology, which by native people are non-human functions if it manifests property cost of human modern postmodern era displaced temporal service of the colony exchange standard rock, the police killings, civilian murders, the world hatred is not possible without genocide. One is ability for a legible solution to ward out despair, such would be is to chapters between that the world is spreading, will try to come from these things, including back to native people, liberal process makes us hopeful. It's recurrent case, any hope is in this destruction of this world's success, not guaranteed, but it's all we have redistributed through higher wages for the working class that depend on the continued occupation of soil and land. This assumes that settlers are entitled to a greater share of disposal colonization, tucking in what movement refers to disparities in what the settler reoccupation of soil land, pursuit of workers, support colonial redistribution, influence on wealth is native land, 99% focused to supermajority of renters, indigenous people, invisible, and absorbed inheritance assumption land is property belongs to the U.S. land dominates the basis for use. Well, if we took away land, there would be little wealth left to redistribute workers, to engage colonization beyond failure, generate solidarity seems like colonization still be a econ possibility. The discourses of health are haunted by the native. It is the specter of the native as the corporal and two spatial locus of disease which house beyond the great Belcourt. Some key entities not being in this world is own biological struggle now pays how big about affects under misery about social or biological politics, thinkable sickness, queries, or racial symptom of the world. There's not good for most entities and sickness are constituted categories. Health is by political measure. Ability to adjust to structural pressure, individual settler colonialism, dying is a racial state of not having a body to those whose poison is found to introduce heart and life disease, Catholics, indigeneity, present in up deadly generous forms of non-sovereignty that are tasted, predisposition, those raciality of illness away from the political health, not biological, but subject capacity to adapt to and survive structural pressure by medical language shapes unequal experience of sickness and death. How we talk about disease embraces the life or death matter. Disease always already cheaters on the virtue of unmanageability by medical language representation of mature semiotics. The indigenous rights of office undeserving of the good life indigenous racial matter articulated genetics and health is inseparable. And the bad life biology is where indigenous suffering is headed through the future. Settler cronyism is unsustainable, existential, right? When you primitive living understanding trust relationships of power crisis accumulating testifying the overall being fighting to apologies Marxist disaster I'm treating confrontation to political attention contemporary manifestation contradiction pure religious support and access to resources on a global scale less others accept where they depend on outsourced junior imperial mode and right condition exists in debate for resources and each external cost of CO2 gross zeros alternative equal imperial tension conflicts over raw materials intersection of refugees outside extreme key capsules use lockdowns inter racism natural so no inevitably political economy untouched politics are correct conclusion for cultural crisis to start that the state is essential state party the alternative is refusal try to flips negative because the greater threat of the status quo the more pressure there is to join movements for decolonial resistant cow when foresees possibility could has your concept back through subtle colonial infrastructure costs to be created politics supply chain structure planetary ecology her lead to politics from Amazon workers the Amazon from Montreal to San Paulo communities are saying no to refusal to state for resist or reject the paradigm of colonial thought generous source of power to embrace living otherwise and block capability support regeneration ecology harnessing flows of organization ways of being evolution is something that grows with the will would be assist in practice and experience of possibilities refuse to see conclusion on a sinking chip working to shape change critiques of suggestion our state to challenge commitments to colonialism Henderson 50 solitary love radical and genocide our nature offers to reconcile challenges others always in defensive position on lands sustained defensive posture requires burning tension disaster decolonization must and also the colonial subjects of nation as or total as present having by result of colonialism can be subverted candor it's its protection to people, cultivation, cross-manning, any civil settler subject, resistance, settler colonialism, Christian destructor, exercise to be tried, repetitive practices, settler states, meaning to disrupt reputation, disrupt reproduction, settler subject, colonial, epistemologies have material effects, all called and two sectors, portrays and values identified in a different way, alternative values, such activists, can have systemic resources can be identified, choose resources, step up for origin, ready, quantity, and all to data without involving interpretation, ensures that non-turn and inevitable epistemic and just extract elements from their original strategies and possibility of being held accountable to the main interpretations group. Per one, accessibility, waiting, elite, preserve racist, and not voting down, which is minority out that it waits to based on possible participation and it is actively unfair to sue debaters. That means your primary concern should be to punish violent discourse, too incoherent. Yeah, isn't real. Voting F would pass the plan, but active orientations can change resource models and influence political orientation, which overall all closely due to the hundreds of hours you spend. Their offense is limited solely to debate, which is only good if its research models aren't violent out there. The impacts are true, and extinction is inevitable, so they can't solve anything since the evidence of passive not any good neck on presumption. 3. Defense. Actually, defend their epistemologies to facilitate disasters about settlerism so that inferior PR and prep design the winning C, use strength of link. They're obviously prepared for this debate since that call. It's insistent on every topic, so the impact of bar critical education massively outweighs. Next off, if fairness and education matter, living which applies to everyone, that doesn't. I love 24th living which consists of articles of the covenant with state parties recognize the right of everyone to just and favorable work which rise all workers fair wages regardless of sector. Global consensus agrees. Global living wage, no day living which apply to all workers regardless of sector. Job type. So does domestic consensus UMD, no day AFL movement living which enable all workers, including workers not part of a union, maintain standard of living. Workers means every person. Supreme Court of Alabama 99 defined workers every person under high. Worker means every in court of appeals for watching 14 workers every person in this state engaged in employment. For one particular limits, they open the floodgates for infant local sectoral minimum wage laws without changes the structure of the labor market. 2. Ground small sector aspect links to generics that's largely written by national policy, artificial invading after win rate based on competition and theory track your option have a whole econ keyboard, whereas links to tiny s are impossible. T outweighs because it determines the NC strategy and limits our gateway to the potential for negative beast doesn't justify non-topical ads competing interest versus us debate models, which is best for normally outweighs. It's also most often over time even marginal abuse as of reasonability, arbitrary, no broad line, or universal conception, first instruction venture, which feels engagement and compensates to use of non-offensive and spirit. Jot debater. We get the reading of the 1 no artist, the logical she'll be sick in the debating on case on for utilitarian calculations of verse are unethical and just like essentially genocidal violence, all returning the util calculation, deceiving like no rejections of relative goals that define risk analysis, cannot address and circularity. We shall be also remain that the kind of calculate, not just gather relevant data, elements effect, especially we can never know risk benefit analysis of how long some to job with those allow us to feel certain decision risk will be so we're all left disposal of the worst evil. As with the destruction of the planet, the worst illogical calculation to assume of this, they can justify genocide, gross literal killings, and place a erasure of a world itself compared to models, duties, left equation, operate according to a world destroying genocidal logic, independently fluid ontology proves that there's no hope for natives through the state, which means that if we went ontology, it takes out extinction outweighs, since the only hope is in the alternative, which is the only thing that can provide value to native life. Now, pandemics, they can't solve the impact of solid global last round in response to pandemics. US is not key. Insert a 1AC Albert and all 21 and all causes to charge such as costs. Insert a 1AC. Technically 23 trust is a link inciting indigenous people to adhere to a racist colonial system that is constantly ignored their suffering, prioritize white interests as a modern form of assimilation, revitalizing US leadership as a link cast the settler states as they're being deserving of having authority over the global south, which is what originally justifies imperialism and genocide. Disease can cause extinction. Also 20 pathogens likely to cause extinction to 200,000 years without experiment at the base of solar past opposed only extinction by number of animals, only mammal. His arguments are disparate, diverse, capable, responsive to United States, increased immunity by exposure, killer states with sustainability, limit damage, or war. It doesn't cause war. It poses 24 characteristic optimism, peace, or pessimism. See, we can all parse equally. There can be gods of work on us, whether they can first self-define. Epidemics cause more sickness, slows war, or depends on people and real and perform in combat. Terrorism, Link Cowan makes this argument clear. Those fighting for refusal are cast as terrorists, which enables further crackdown. It means all is incomprehensible with the avenue by terrorist cost. Only 1/3 of a terror by which a limited threat of materials enters rudimentary, hooks on toxin to a casualty, and it's neurological reduction delivery, vehicle favoring small attacks. Go back up. Mitchell in the case, extinction is an empty supporter that teaches the global device of actual culpability of the ongoing violence of actually driving extinction. Mitchell, simply extinction and western fears that body any nightmare of population good destruction, extinction, empty supporter against abstract unthinkability, initiative to generalize demand that matter in humanity, we try to see universal discourse on extinction, future just systematic destruction without enacting use in instance and mass culpability, perpetuate structural violence from western sides cause extinction, not unfortunate consequence, but harmful activities embodiment of particular patterns of structural violence that disproportionately affect specific groups. I'm good for context.
Let's talk about the K, redistribution for the working class dependent on continued occupation of stolen land. Why are wages explicitly tied to land?
Sure, all wealth is in the United States is taken from the stealing of native land. When we create wealth, especially in major industries such as medical care, that is reliant on taking resources and taking wealth from native land.
Wait, I guess I'm confused. If all wealth is tied to land, what does an NFT have to do with native land?
Well, NFTs require electricity, other resources that we're stealing for native land independently.
Wait, electricity. Wait, so nothing in the US that we can own can ever
be. The thinks settlers shouldn't own wealth. Settlers should not own wealth. It was taken from natives. That's bad. Tucking Yang agree with this.
Okay, sure. I guess that's fine. The Belcourt evidence, discourses of health. What about health uniquely, or what about biology uniquely is settler colonial?
It's not biology. The bell curve evidence is specific to representations of things like disease. It says that biomedical language is representational. It writes indigenous people off as undeserving of the good life. Specifically, it does this by shaping unequal experience of sickness and death. The way indigenous people view sickness and death and the way they experience this is distinct from, yeah.
This seems like a critique of the healthcare system not giving access to indigenous people and drawing racial lines.
It's really not. The bell curve evidence says understandings of disease and the way that the AF has advocated for things like increasing disease preparedness in the United States misses the point. The bell curve evidence says that representations of disease are racist because the way that indigenous people experience sickness and death is distinct from the way that white settlers...
Wait, this seems crazy settler colonial. Why do indigenous people experience disease distinctly from settlers?
Belcourt is a native, so I don't think...
Wait, that doesn't change my question. Why do indigenous people experiencing diseases in an entirely different way from settlers, like, why is that justified?
Because the way that settlers define health and disease is different from the way indigenous people define it. We're not saying that indigenous people don't die. It's just that the way they experience disease and the way they understand it due to their culture is distinct from the way white settlers do.
Wait, so you're telling me that, like, if I got a cold versus an indigenous person got a cold, we experience the cold in different ways? What does that mean?
Well, what the bell curve evidence says is that the way that indigenous people experience disease is so distinct that things like the healthcare system or white settlers...
It's so distinct that they cannot get treated by doctors if they have a cold?
Well, empirically, white settler doctors have refused to treat indigenous people.
So this is, again, a question of access for whether...
I don't think that changes if more white people get accepted to the healthcare system. They won't change it. Like, they're not going to give indigenous people different treatment.
Where have you read an internal link that the affirmative reduces accessibility to indigenous people?
Well, the bell curve evidence and the Juarez evidence above says that if we win ontology, that means that the way that white people operate and the way that settlers as a whole operate is that they're constantly driven by a fear of native people and are forced to continue dispossession of their land.
Okay,
if we win that, that means that they're
forced... At the end of the
forced...
day, do indigenous people deserve healthcare?
Yes, but not the way that the AF does it.
So, do they... Sure, I'll take that. Status?
Unconditional.
Of prep remaining. The order of this speech is going to be the T page, case page, and then set call. Actually, I'll use a bit more prep. You'll see my dog. Sorry. the speech is T case sec call. Okay, consent.
Let me just good.
Good. So anyway. T counter to living wages are always given to a subset of the population top of the national sector. 2. Federal minimum wage regulations set a national floor on wages was different about living wage ordinances that are much more ordinarily targeted. In all instances, ordinances covers a subset of the city workforce. A good example is Baltimore, Los Angeles. There are worker definitions about workers as a body, not that we cannot specify workers. They should have read evil. They read the wrong definition. Prefer first-in-class topic ed. The forces in-depth research leads to nuance based about specific workers and industries. The alternatives reflect the decom politics based and only one whole rights advantage area. This is topic 2. After new advantage wise all picks and different worker picks. Picks from TPAs and worsen plans is negative generics, but apps don't have any versus picks premiums don't apply. Smaller picks lead to smaller deficits and bigger unpredictable net benefits makes it structurally impossible. 3. Functional limits. AL advantage flying the same internal links of higher wages and smallest won't be able to access larger impacts. B cases the smallest statistics and live for random worker groups of pigs have a lower barrier to entry. Don't need insolvency advocates. 4. Generics. Econ politics states cap and NC is applied every after his ability to evaluate abuse versus the substance system for running on T, but it doesn't incentivize for theory based the expensive topic in case. Extent pandemics, doctor shortages keep us unaware of the next pandemic. Future strains will be worse, and inflating geopolitical tensions causing war terms and the impact will concede the trust advantage, and we'll go for war. And pandemics. Posen doesn't take into account trade wars or barriers, as well as nuclear force strike. It's about conventional wars. Suzuki evidence takes into account things like populism, trade wars, and disputes, which their evidence doesn't sort of solve for. Both of their house set evidence and their cross evidence is about bioterror and disease spread. It's not about war, which means they can't solve the link stuff. First, trust is not a link. Expecting indigenous people to adhere to a racist system is not the point. It's the point that it is there for the healthcare system to exist. If indigenous people want it, revitalizing U.S. leadership is not a link. It's not a question of what should be happening. It's a question of what is happening with U.S. leadership that already exists right now. The terror is a link. No. The arguments for refusal casting as terrorists. No. It's specifically about bioterror, which is people building weapons. It is not about anybody who the state is like. The cycle page. The util page. The util page, util calculations are good, everyone is equal, and Oliver assumes that we can't aggregate each being. Yes, we can. Material suffering should come first, and you should weigh the net good where everybody's equal, but experiences different degrees of suffering. The Mitchell evidence, this recutting of Mitchell just says that extinction is unlikely, not that it's bad. Our app is a specific reason why extinction outweighs. You should prefer scenario specificity. They didn't answer the actual warrants in our Mitchell evidence, which is that ontological conditions of life, including their history, which is based in settler colonialism, are taken into account by extinction cycle. Framework, we get to weigh the chaotic consequences of the plan against the links first, fairness, anything else means experimental, and I see forcing on one year restart. You link, you lose means you can never test the K, which over-determines accessibility. Second is clash, key to engagement around a predictable stasis point. Clash is key to self-reflexivity, which creates ethical subjects. 3, policy education, scenario analysis, and policy making forces debaters at the ivory tower, which controls their terminal impact, forcing a focus on settlerism is arbitrary and impossible because we would have to always read infinite literature basis of the week because we would be reading a set called, then after pets and anthro, then cap, and 4, they only get to weigh the incremental impact of the after as well. Anything else forces us to defend all genocide isn't competitive. And that's the way util calculations works, which they conceded. 5, debate is a game where technicality overcodes everything else. We switch sides and play different roles for the resolution. 6, fiat is good. The AF is to win, that the plan is a good idea. Anything else shifts the burden of proof beyond debate. Fiat double blind is wrong, because if the AF can potentially pass and build debaters who advocate for the AF, if debate spills over, but if we win that it doesn't, subjectivity spillovers don't matter. But if spillover happens, policy making spillover is better. 7, no subject formation. We chalk up losses to technical mistakes, not research practices, and they're missing a link. There's no reason the ballot rectifies the link under their framework. Independent of offense. 8, the ballot solves fairness. The grounds of use isn't unfair until the ballot is signed as punishment, which means the ballot only solves fairness through norming. 9, Henderson, justifies you link, you lose by citing repetitive speech acts. That's infinitely regressive, means any abstract something the average can link to, and this evidence without indigenous people disrupting speech acts and forcing settlers to come at their own assumptions. Not about reading policy as bad, otherwise it's a link to conscientization in which settlers feel good while staying with land. 10, Alcoff is wrong. Debate has nothing to do with taking resources, commodities, or treating as inseparable from its origin. That dehumanizes debaters and treats education as a commodity, which means they link to their own K extinction ways as the floor for value reversal and turns all their proponent of offense for raising capacity for change. Independently, they don't have the jurisdiction to make the decision for 8 billion people, even if their theory is right. 5, no link and link turn the after linkage power from government, private corporations that pay indigenous people less. B, their Belcourt evidence is a linkage just by saying that indigenous people experience disease in an entirely different way from settlers. That was the exact argument that doctors use by giving less anesthesia to indigenous people, and the theory of power falls in pessimism tracks that denies indigenous agency, like 20. Rigid indigenous theory is caught in through pessimism tracks with limits ability to create better future shots when indigenous people go up and on the words work by indigenous leaders and self-government have been futile, authentic struggle and demarcates indigenous leadership and that and co-opted track through the concept of colonialism for the state is unchanged since started to colonize.
Okay. 4 minutes. No theory, voters, RPIs, etc. Right? Like. Okay, it'll be the K, then case. Or the K, then framing, then case. Okay. Ontology should filter your decision calculus. If we win it serves multiple purposes. First, it is a cool opposite of the and linked to the absence. Their investment in policy reform and policy education is bad because it is cruelly optimistic to assume that the state can do anything beneficial for natives. If we win our ontological claim that the state is structured by genocide and that it will do whatever it can to continue the death of native people. It also serves as a decided framework, which I'll explain on the framework page later. But they've conceded that history follows a progression from the conquest of the frontier and removal of Indians and reservation and establishment of Chatel Soviet and the plantation to St. Iraq, with the posting of Flint, Michigan, alongside police killings of black people, mass incarceration, civilian murders of native peoples by white supremacist militias, and missing and murdered Indians and women. The frame you should use for your ontology is that while moments of progress may occur, the nature of violence does not change due to our thesis of temporal stillness. No matter what reforms have happened, black and native people are still the most likely victims of police killings, with black people getting shot in their own homes, and native people have been locked out of their own. The relation between native and settlers is still asymmetric, with legal recognition requires submission to a system which natives never have full political sovereignty. They also consider our psychoanalytic work, which is in the header side evidence. They conceded that settlers have a drive to dispossess native people from the land because they do not know how to reflect and realize that their daily lives are predicated on such copious amounts of genocide that creates a psychic drive to eliminate native people, which is conceded of the header side evidence, which offers are Lightfoot evidence because only ours has explanatory power. Now, Lightfoot is wrong. Half of it says our case is too pessimistic, but there's no impact of that insofar as we want progress within the settler order is impossible. The only Lightfoot advocates for things like activism or things outside of the state, which is what the alternative is, which means this card flows neck. And their examples of additions resistors are where outside the state, which is above. You on to REP, which is the main word in this card, is not an example of progress. It's not legally binding. It's just a set of vague principles liberals can use to act like they're doing stuff for natives while doing too little to expose conservative pipelines that diminish the largely small parcels of land allotted to natives, independently disproven about how even though the U.S. and other countries signed the treaty, they still label things like the genocide of Palestine or other killings across the world proves it's not binding and fails. Now, they say no link, they mishandle, or they completely drop a redistribution link, which I'll extend here. Remember, our framework interp will mean it that only will mean that even a tiny percent risk of a link is sufficient to outweigh, which means that any link to her to where or they link to her is equal here. I'm good for the drop redistribution link. The one is plan and justification are built on the idea that the U.S. government can require that everyone is entitled to living wage, which includes settlers' idea that settlers have an entitlement to the full value and labor of their labor lies first and foremost on the right to the land. This is Tucking Yang says that all the wealth on Turtle Island would not be possible without that original and continued extraction. This is also a dissent to the non-existent permutation because you cannot decolonize while explaining access to stolen wealth. All Saul's case in this prior question, decolonization means how the wealth is utilized and first and foremost is discerned by natives, not the settler state. They say no link, we pay natives a living wage. This is incoherent insofar as our thesis of the way they've justified representationally what wealth is was conceded. They've also this is just incoherent. Native people are locked out of things like higher education and are empirically denied for access to higher university, which are necessary to go into the medical profession, which means at best they help a small minority of natives out while still setting the stage for the continued genocide and expansion and killings of millions of more. They say health. Now the last argument they made was that the health link was racist. This is wrong. Remember, the alternative frames this out because the alternative advocates for native self-determination. They can decide what they feel that, or they can decide the ways to treat disease and the way they experience disease is because the alternative is refusal, which grants control to native people, which is the only way that they can determine for themselves what disease is. It's also not a racist claim. It is simply factually true that the way native people and the way their cultures have the way that their cultures have occurred according to the Bell Court evidence is fundamentally distinct from the way white cultures and white views on things like disease and the biomedical language white people use is distinct from the way that the biomedical language and the representations of disease that natives use. Either way, this is outframed by the redistribution link, which certainly outweighs. They have dropped that imperialism is existential. There was simply no response to this. Conceded it costs the climate and resource conflicts in the global south, escalates causes nuclear extinction, means it is try or die for the alternative, and I do not want to hear to hear on extinction outweighs. Now, framework. Our interpretation is that the office and object of research, if we win a link, it would be sufficient to win. First, ontology, there's a fiat K that was dropped there. Model debate versus cruelly optimistic decisions that cause inside ours versus analysis epistemologies through native demands. It cheers a good starting point, which is prerequisite to any valid debate. Second, subject KB, Henderson says speech has influence settlers that evidence outweighs because it's psychoanalytic. They conceded that these of drives, which is explained above, that outweighs any all causes. We don't have any all causes because we don't discuss settler colonialism and discussions elsewhere, and they spend a lot of time researching it in debate, which they don't do for speech text elsewhere, which is specifically necessary in the context of debate. They say fairness. They drop that you should use rent the blame. Our model is still fair. They had infinite pure on Patrick half the one you see, and this is predictable because we create the core premise of redistribution, which is what the entire app is based off of. above. And then they also conceded that the fairness only matters insofar as debate is not violent, but they dropped that their model justifies debaters saying slurs and winning because the plain is a good idea, which is the accessibility game, which is conceded flips fairness because it's actually unfair to exclude certain debaters. Clash ethical subjectivity is impossible if we continue discussing only about policy reform, which is ontology, stuff that was done above. Policy education impact justified, no reason why working within the state is good, and ontology frames out the incremental stuff. This is wrong. We have one that your representation justify imperialism in the global south, which is the very evidence which is explained above. You should not view it incrementally because it is try or die to end it, given that it was a drop impact. They say in technical debate, we don't read racist apps on the app. You chose to read a racist app, which supercharges all of our framework offense. And suicide debate just means that we read non-racist apps on the app and critique racist ones on the neck, critique the racist ones on the neck. They say fiat good, irrelevant, the alternative also participates in fiat. They have no defense of why the state is good or key, and the alternative obviously proves an instance in which the state is not key because it is fundamentally genocidal. The two-line argument concede double lines wrong. Double lines wrong. They say technical decision. This was handled above. Even if competitive incentives matter, our interpretation forces them to not read racist apps or lose, which flips competitive incentives because they are forced to not be racist in round, which outweighs because of the accessibility we did above. The ballot can solve our impact because it endorses the speech act that was anti-colonial and not racist. The Henderson evidence is not aggressive. I explained the stuff about second tribes above, and it does justify you link lose, which is good. The Alcoff evidence, I'm not going for it. Extinction does not outweigh because we have an extinction impact of imperialism that was dropped, and even if they won a specific scenario, they conceded that the only thing that spills out is their speech acts. Their speech acts will not pass a policy because they will never be a policymaker, whereas we can become agents of refusal and participate in settler decision making, anti-settler colonial decision making.
Cool. 105. Case K. The order on K is like the extinction stuff and then framing.
I'm good.
Cool.
Extend pandemics. Dr. Short just keep us unprepared for the next pandemic. Future change will be worse and inflating geopolitical tensions causing war turns every impact. They have conceded the entire affirmative, which means this is a specific scenario for why we have a terminally carded impact, for why it causes war. They do not have a terminal on extinction. This is policy making 101, saying ecological collapse does not mean that ecological collapse or warming causes extinction. You should not grant them extinction or turns case analysis is entirely new in the 2NR. They did not even read a new terminal in the 2NR, which means any risk of weighing flows affirmative pandemics come first and it happens first. It's try or die, and time frame outweighs because pandemics are already coming now. Readiness is necessary. Cool, the framework page. We get to weigh the fiated consequences of the plan against the links. They put a lot of arguments on the framework debate, but they missed three of them. First is that the ballot solves fairness. It is only possible that the ballot can resolve fairness. The rounds of use isn't unfair until the ballot is signed as punishment, but they cannot solve their education speech acts or their reiterative speech acts on Henderson because they have to win two things. First, they have to win subject formation, and second, they have to win that this round, which has already been skewed out of fairness, is able to be evaluated in the first place. That's the fairness paradox. You are not able to evaluate the round which overdetermines accessibility because I do not know whether my affirmative is bad or inaccessible or racist unless we're able to first test the moments of the K, which means forcing a one-area restart and making it impossible for the money seat to leverage their offense against the K means it's functionally impossible. They conceded that you link, you lose means we can never test the K, which over-determines accessibility. All of their arguments about saying racist things and then being able to win the round are wrong because those are not a question of whether we can test it in debate. That's a question of whether we should be reporting someone to tab room or not, i.e. if you say the N-word, it's not the jurisdiction of a judge because the judge could be racist and say, oh, I don't care. It's a question of tab room in the tournament, kicking them out or disqualifying them, which is not related to anything that they went for in the round. We're not not going for policy education. The only thing that matters is fairness, which is actually two more things. First is subject formation. It turns Henderson. Speech acts are irresolvable and chalked up to technical mistakes. All of their arguments about Henderson are based on indigenous people going into speech acts like city councils or halls and then using their voices to disrupt the space for those policy-making abilities. So debate is distinct from a purely policy-making space because it's used as technical wins and losses. You should ask them why they read T and then why they included a thing where it's like, oh, here's the layer. Even if you think fairness and education is good, we can go for T. It proves that technical impacts are the only thing that debate over determines, and it is not refining our blocks in the method of research and education, but rather refining our blocks in the method of fairness. That means that fiat is good. The last thing we have to win is that fiat is good. The affirmative has to win that the plan is a good idea. Anything else shifts the burden of proof way beyond debate. It's not a question of whether fiat is a good or spills over or subjectivity. It's a question of what the affirmative has to do to win the round. The only thing the affirmative has to do to win the round is that the affirmative is a good idea and has good consequences. Otherwise, it shifts the burden of debate and makes it fundamentally unfair and impossible for us to test anything else. You should treat debate as a game, and they have no explicit reason for why ontology overdetermines any of these arguments. The last thing we'll go for is the Mitchell evidence, which is conceded. Extinction outweighs ontology because it includes things like settler colonial history and erases those. It means it's impossible for any of their moments of progress within ontology that they talk about in the Tuner to ever happen in the first place, which means the affirmative overdetermines it and is try or die for extinction because you do not get the jurisdiction to decide over 8 billion people. Look, the ballot does not solve any of their impact for subject formation. Their Henderson evidence was completely misapplied, and they've conceded that the ballot can only solve fairness, which means the ballot has to go out.